Folks will be ready to go as soon as we get a green light here. Right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Edina City Council meeting. It is Wednesday, August 6, 2025, and it is 7 p.m. It is our normal start time for City Council meetings. Normally, we meet on a first and third Tuesdays, but of course, with National Night Out last night, we participated in that. All of us were out, I think, and enjoying block parties and neighborhood parties with our fellow residents, and people will report on that, I'm sure, at a subsequent time in the meeting. Before I call the meeting to order, I just want to remind everybody that we're doing these meetings on a hybrid basis. We've been doing it since COVID. People can call in if we have a public hearing. If we don't have a public hearing, it can still call in for public comment. Some folks will be in the audience tonight for both those participatory opportunities from the public in general. And we welcome people to call in. We'll put the call-in information is on the screen now. And be ready to go because the community comment comes up fairly quickly. And so having provided that information, I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask our clerk, Sharon Ellison, to call the roll.
Councilmember Agnew is absent. Councilmember Jackson. Here. Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Risser. Here. Mayor Hovland.
Here. Our colleague, Kate Agnew, is missing tonight because she had a baby. Like just a little while ago, had a baby. And her third girl. And so it's exciting for her and her family, and we wish her the best and wish she was here to join us this evening. We've got an interesting agenda and look forward to the conversations with all the people that will be involved in the meeting this evening. Mayor, the next thing we're going to do, yes.
If I could, I'm fairly certain that we could wave to the camera and she might be watching.
Oh.
So congratulations.
Hey, congratulations. Wish you the best, Kate, and little Kate.
Yeah.
All right, let's. The next thing is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everyone. We've got a meeting agenda that's been published for the benefit of the public and the members of the council in advance of the meeting. Is there anyone on the council or from a staff level that wishes to amend or change the meeting agenda in any form or fashion? Is there a motion to adopt the meeting agenda as published?
So moved.
Second.
We had a motion by Member Jackson, second by Member Pierce to adopt the meeting agenda as published. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the meeting agenda as published say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. The meeting agenda is adopted. I had mentioned earlier that community comment would come up fairly quickly, and here we are. And so we're going to go to folks in the audience first that have a concern they want to address with the council, and then we're going to turn to the virtual world to see if anybody is joining us there. And then our city manager is going to respond to any community comments that were made at the prior meeting, which is our normal practice. So welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Ralph Sickert. I live at 4311 Cornelia Circle. Last September's final council meeting resulted in a projected 17% increase in general property tax levy for 2026. That's not news to the council, and one would hope it's not news to residents. This past month, Manager Neal finally shared that he's targeting something below 10% for the 2026 general levy. Mr. Neal's target rings hollow. It's hollow because, as Mr. Neal has stated numerous times since December, his focus is the general levy, not the overall tax burden on residents. Unfortunately, his words have become actions taken by both he and the council. In June, the council gave final approval to terminate 6 city staff and outsource Edina's property tax assessing department to Hennepin County, an initiative which will eventually reduce Edina's general levy by $1 million, only to see that cost passed on to residents via Hennepin County property taxes. In July, the council gave so-called preliminary approval to issue a $9 million bond to be paid via a special levy, a rarely used mechanism to tax residents. In this case, it will add roughly $1 million a year above and beyond the general levy. And later this evening, Council will likely give final approval to a $1.2 million increase to the fees added to every customer's Excel and CenterPoint and utility bill. Dollars to be used for Edina street repair, costs previously funded via the general levy. None of these three actions save taxpayers a dime. As a resident, I care about my entire tax burden, no matter which pocket or whose pocket the money is taken from. But for the average resident, this is hard to follow. So let me share a simple story overheard at a North Dakota cafe. Ole goes to the local bank to make his $400 monthly mortgage payment. When he arrives, Scotty, the bank manager, says, Ole, I can reduce your monthly payment to the bank by half. All you need to do is sign this paperwork. Ole says, that would be awesome. I'll talk to Lena right away. Ole shares the paperwork with Lena, who diligently reads the 300 pages and then turns to Ole and says, Ole, Scotty's right. If we sign this, our monthly payment to the bank will be reduced in half. Fabulous, says Ole. Not fabulous, says Lena. Instead of paying the bank, we'd have to pay the other half to his brother's bank in Wisconsin. Whereupon Ole says, so Lena, you mean we won't be saving $200 a month? My question tonight is, when will the council send a strong message, a united message, that 2026 and 2027 are not just about the optics of the general levy? To me, August feels a little late.
Thank you, Mr. Sickert. Thank you for maintaining the clock time, too. Appreciate that. Anyone else in the audience that wishes to express a concern to the council on a matter that they're interested in? Okay. Let's turn then to the virtual world and see if we've got anybody listening in that wants to speak to the council.
I don't have anyone on the line for community comment at this time.
Okay. All right, let's turn to our city manager for response to community comments that were made at the prior meeting and see if there's anything to report. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. We had three kind of sets of questions at our last council meeting. First question was around lighting, or around Grandview Square. And yes, there has been a reduction in lighting, but the lighting that has been replaced is better lighting, more intense lighting. But the lighting number went from 46 to 28. It's part of the Grandview Square street lighting project plan. We did this reduction because we were running into tree issues that were obstructing the light, and the existing lights were directly adjacent to a number of trees and blocked by foliage directly across the narrow street, and then some were redundant. It's also important, I think, for the council to know we get just as many, I'd say, complaints about too much light coming from street lights and as we do not enough light coming from street lights. So it's important to try to balance this, and we're also trying to balance it from a budget standpoint as well. Second set of questions was around pedestrian safety on Eden Avenue in the Grandview District. This is a question that's come up a number of times before. I think we'd first want to say we appreciate the concerns that are being expressed. The concerns around safety are real. We are seeing a great deal more traffic on this area, detoured onto this area because of the bridge replacement than we expected, quite frankly. But a number of the ideas that were raised are not possible for us, considering that that we have Minnesota state aid route requirements that we have to comply with, including some of the suggestions around raised crosswalks or speed bumps we just aren't allowed to do by state law. So we are continuing to recommend that people walk up to the street crossing near Vernon. We ask that they push buttons for flashers, wait for traffic to stop, make eye contact with drivers. These are all the kind of recommendations we give for these flashers anyway. Final question was whether or not we would be adding more firefighter paramedics in the upcoming budget cycle. And the answer to that is we are working on our budget proposal. We are trying to figure out how to do that. and bring that to you in a way that's both economically stable and sustainable for the future as well. And we'll be doing that at the next council meeting.
Thank you, Manager Neal. Manager Neal's comments prompt any thoughts from council members? Councilmember Risser?
I will go back and listen to the comments from the previous meeting, but hearing that the reduction in lights went from 46 to 28, when the words that were used was this was going to be replacement, is cause for concern. And if I'm remembering correctly, the resident did say there were areas now that were very dark at night, and they were concerned about being able to walk around and walk pets, and that seems like a very basic concern. And so I'm wondering if we can add more lights, at least go verify what the situation is. And maybe I'll go do that, but I did just want to comment on that.
Councilmember Risser, members of council, I think what we can pledge to you is that we will go forward with this plan, and we'll see how the light turns out, and if we need more for safety purposes, we'll come back and address that then. And Director Milner.
And I would just add, the lights aren't in yet. They're concerned with dark because it's completely dark. We had to take all the lights out. They just are getting the bases in, so there will not be lights for 6 to 8 weeks yet. So I wouldn't review it at this point. They're not operational.
Do you have any sense of the illuminating power of the 28 versus the 46 that were there?
We feel a lot of them were blocked by tree foliage, if you look at Google Maps as an example, but we did it walking. They were in the trees, so we'd have to take trees out to put lights back where they were. So we don't think those were doing much of anything for street lighting, and we felt like they were redundant, like Manager Neal had mentioned in that response.
Right.
But we can always add lights later. We know that there's capacity to do it. And we can,
Your advice is let's see how it works once we get the new
Correct.
lights in. And
Correct.
See if people still have concerns. Okay. Anything else from, yes, Councilmember Pierce?
Sticking with the same area, the crosswalk. Manager Neal, you talked about what we're allowed to do on a temporary basis in that area. If I understand, the suggestion was to walk up to Vernon. And I just want to clarify, I drive through all the time, and I actually thought there was a sidewalk on that side, and there actually isn't. And so if they're going to be on a sidewalk all the way to Vernon, they actually would have to cross the street and then walk on that sidewalk past the library entrance and the BP to get to the light. On the other side, the sidewalk stops, and then, for a pathway, they'd be walking across grass or a lot or something, and then the sidewalk picks up again to go to Vernon. And so is that what we're suggesting?
Yeah, Chad, you want to take a crack at that?
Or am I thinking about it the wrong way?
Director Milner, you're talking about on the east side of Vernon, I think.
Yeah, maybe we'll start at Grandview Square, where this crosswalk is. So if you're coming from Grandview Square, use the sidewalk that's on the south side of Eden. There is a sidewalk all the way to Vernon. Then we're asking to use the push buttons in the traffic signal and head kind of to the north towards Jerry's.
Okay. So
In that first segment where there's a bus stop and that first entrance in the Jerry's, there is a full-size sidewalk there. And that's where most people are going. They're going to Jerry's. So you can now enter the parking lot and go that way. If you continue on Vernon, there's not a sidewalk, and that's a major gap in our system that we're looking for those opportunities to fill with grant money and working with the county. So in our opinion, they can get to Jerry's where we think most of the people were headed using that crosswalk.
I think we want to acknowledge this isn't a great detour, and it's not what we would like to do ideally, but it is inconvenient for them. That's for sure.
But in that case, we have committed that we're making some changes. Last time we talked, we were just waiting on
So we're still
parts to be delivered or what have you. And then I'd say the same thing for lights. We're committed to make sure that it's lit in a way that residents feel safe, but we want to get in place what should be there, acknowledging that we think the illumination is going to be significantly brighter than what we had currently.
And balancing the light levels so that people who don't like so much street light are heard as much as people who want more light. And within our budget as well.
Thank you.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, just to one last comment, and that's the people walking their dog will feel that they could see the sidewalk safely. I think that was the comment that stuck in my head. So they could go up and down the curb safely. And you would apply standards that would cover that, correct?
Can you repeat that comment?
So one of the commenters last meeting said that her husband walks the dog, and because it's an older population that lives in Grandview Square, they were concerned that the darkness going up and down the curb to the sidewalk when they're walking the dog would not be safe. And that's the sort of thing that you look at when you're determining whether there's enough light, that getting up and down the curb wouldn't be dangerous because it's dark.
We put lights at every intersection. They should be using the pedestrian ramps because there's trees and signs and other stuff that block the lighting mid-block when you step over a curb. So yes, the lighting at the intersections where the ramps are and there's no step overs are going to be illuminated.
Okay, thank you.
And back to the crosswalk issue, what I understand is that we've got a temporary problem that's significant because of the bridge reconstruction out on Highway 100. And then based on that project being finished, there's going to be some further analysis on what we can do to improve the permanent condition in terms of enhanced safety for pedestrians, if anything.
Yeah, I provided you a list of 10 things we can do a crosswalk. We've done about 8 of them. The next 2 are 6-figure kind of traffic signals over the roadway, and I don't know if that's appropriate for that location. So I think we have to address that some people just aren't comfortable with mid-block crossings because we can't change the behaviors of people pulling behind them after they're halfway across a crosswalk. That's almost an enforcement thing, and we just can't be sitting there 24 hours a day. So we will continue to look at it and see if there's things we can do after this interchange project is over, when traffic resumes to its normal location on Vernon and 50th.
So what we really got right now, at least on a temporary basis, is a driver behavior problem relative to pedestrians.
Yes.
I bet you'd never have that in California, would you? They're always stopping for pedestrians out there. All right, okay, let's move on. We've got a consent agenda. That didn't mean to cut anybody off if there's any more further dialogue on this issue. Consent agenda, anybody wish to remove an item from the consent agenda on the council? All right, is there a motion to adopt the items on the consent agenda in a single motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we got, we'll go, Member Pierce, we'll go. Member Pierce moves, Member Jackson seconds the adoption of the items on the consent agenda in a single motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the items on the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Items on the consent agenda are adopted in that motion, and there are quite a few of them, and I'm going to turn to Member Jackson, who wanted to make a couple of observations about some of the items on the consent agenda, and I did as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the consent agenda had an appointment of a number of our engaged residents, and I wanted to thank them for their service. So Jerry Gilligan and Jeff Huguet are going to continue to serve on the Edina Housing Foundation. Thank you, gentlemen. Richard Miller, we are appointing to the Minnehaha Watershed District Board of Managers, and I want to thank him for stepping up and serving our community. And Bernadette Piacek-Lanes is going to be on our Arts and Culture Commission. So thank you to her. So thank you all of you for continuing to serve our community.
Thanks to that, Councilmember Jackson. Just a couple of quick observations. I've been, over time, the work that our sustainability director has done and our grant writer, it's been pretty phenomenal. And so to know that we're going to be the first city in the state of Minnesota to convert our heavy equipment fleet to biodiesel, where it really didn't make much sense to try to do it on an electrified basis. But to know that we're going to be able to reduce 90% of our greenhouse gases produced by that equipment by this conversion is pretty cool. And so we got this biodiesel B100 fuel supply tank on the consent agenda tonight. And of course, it's all supported by a grant from the Department of Commerce, I think for what, managing $163,000, which is great. Then we've got that conversion going on of the equipment as well. And then from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, we got a really nice grant for 8 new shade structures for the park that we're creating down at Fred Richards, the old Fred Richards Golf Course, for $500,000. And then we got a another grant to assist with ash tree removal for almost $134,000. So kudos to all those on staff that are working on securing grants and observing where opportunities are available and getting in the mix for selection processes. So there's 3 nice grants there totaling, close to $750,000. So that's terrific. I also wanted to thank Jerry Gilligan and Jeff Huggett for serving on being interested in continuing to serve on the Edina Housing Foundation, because they do some good work and they're very valuable with the skill sets that they bring. All right, we've got, we're going to move on to the next portion of the agenda now, which is the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda. We've got 2 matters in this portion of the agenda. One is the Safe and Equitable Mobility Action Plan update. Andrew Scipione has that matter, and then we're going to also address our quality of life survey results for 2025, and that'll be up next. So, Mr. Scipione, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Happy to be here to provide an update on our work on the Safe and Equitable Mobility Action Plan. So this plan started with the adoption of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which established the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, or SS4A. The goal of this program is to prevent roadway fatalities and serious injuries. Through this program, there's $5 billion available for over a 5-year period for planning, demonstration, and implementation of projects that support that goal. However, through this program, an agency needs to have an adopted safety action plan. And although the city has an active routes to school plan, living streets plan, ped and bike master plan, none of those meet the federal requirements for a safety action plan through this legislation. So the city thankfully was able to get a $200,000 grant through this program in order to develop that safety action plan. We also received a $50,000 grant from MnDOT to help cover our local match that's required as part of that grant. The objectives of this plan are, as I mentioned before, to reduce fatalities and serious injuries on all roadways within our community, to review existing guidance and policies we have related to traffic safety, incorporate equity considerations into those decisions, reevaluate the multimodal infrastructure needs of our community, and to increase our grant funding opportunities for infrastructure projects. Because this project is being funded by a federal grant, there are certain components of the plan that we're required to have. One of those is what they call a leadership commitment. Council may recall at your last meeting, you adopted Resolution 2025-83, in which the city committed to a goal of 0 traffic deaths and serious injuries on all of our roadways by 2050, and an interim goal of a 50% reduction by 2035. And I'll get into where our numbers are for traffic fatalities and serious injuries in a little bit. The plan also requires a group that is charged with the oversight of development, implementation, and monitoring of that safety action plan. So with our consultant partners at Alliant, Humanize Minnesota, and Tool Design, we have assembled a task force. That task force includes several members of Edina City staff representing engineering, public works, community engagement, DEI, police, fire, and community health. We also have representatives from the Transportation Commission and from Edina Public Schools. Because this plan relates to all roadways within Edina, not just the local roadways, we also have members of our task force that represent Hennepin County, Metro Transit, and Minnesota Department of Transportation. The safety analysis is a key component of this plan. We started by looking at all crashes reported in the city of Edina over a 10-year period. So this is 2015 to 2024. In that time period, we experienced 6,438 total crashes. On average, that's about 1 every 14 hours occurs in the city of Edina. And you can see the breakdown here by property damage, only, minor and possible injury, and fatal and serious injury crashes. One thing that I think is worth noting here is that thankfully we have a relatively low rate right now of serious and fatal injury crashes, but we do see a serious injury crash roughly every 2 months in our community, and we see a fatality on average every 2.5 years. We also then break down that safety data by roadway classification, so looking at our local roadways, county and state, and you can see the breakdown there based on severity of crash. And we also look at crashes based on mode. So as you can imagine, the majority of our crashes do involve motor vehicles only, about 6,300, and of those crashes, only 1% result in a serious and fatal injury, a fatality or a serious injury. When it comes to bicycle crashes, that fatality and serious injury rate jumps up to 4%, and the minor and possible injury rate is about 90%. And then when it comes to pedestrian crashes, the minor and possible injury rate is 77%, but the fatal and serious injury rate is 18%. This process also requires significant community engagement. We created a page on our Better Together website to get feedback from the community early on as far as where are the issues that they see as they're traveling throughout the community, what are the traffic safety improvements that they would like the city to consider. Through our online survey, we received over 200 submissions from the community. Our online interactive map had about 50 pins placed on it. We also held 5 pop-up events at various community events throughout the summer, and we planned those events to try and hit at least one quadrant of the city. We're also looking at developing a community profile based on key indicators of social vulnerability. So this includes looking at community characteristics like age, race, disability status, income, and vehicle access. The map up here shows the census data that displays the percentage of households in Edina with no vehicle access by census block. And you can see there are some census blocks in the community where as many as 1 out of 3 people do not have access to a vehicle. The goal here is to create a cumulative equity score for each of those census blocks, similar to the PACS equity criteria that we use for scheduling projects that are funded through the PACS fund. And then we will use that cumulative equity score to inform our project prioritization. Our consultant is also looking at existing policies, plans, and processes that we have in place related to traffic safety. So they're looking at the guiding documents shown here, Living Streets, Ped and Bike Master Plan, our comprehensive plan, the Active Routes to School plan, our climate action plan. They're looking at guidance we have related to roadway design, other safety policies, projects that are identified in these plans, and the processes we have for implementation and funding. The next steps in this process, we're currently reviewing the results of our community engagement. We plan to review those with our task force at our meeting that's coming up next month. We're working on completing the other deliverables, including the safety and equity analysis I mentioned before, in addition to starting to develop strategy and project selection. We expect that a draft of this plan will be available by the end of this year. We expect to post that on our Better Together page for additional community feedback, as well as hold a public open house to solicit more community feedback on that plan. I expect to be back before you in early 2026 to ask you to adopt the final Safe and Equity Mobility Action Plan. And once that plan is adopted, then we will start the process of applying again through the SS4A program for funds to implement projects that are recommended in that plan. So I thank you for your time, and I'll take any questions that you may have.
Yeah, there may be questions. Let me go to my colleagues. Member Risser.
I'm all for safe streets. I think it is so important. And one of the things that keeps me up at night is thinking about things that we may approve and they end up not necessarily following what is in our code and could have a negative impact on safety. And I can point to a specific example of this. There was the landscaping plan for 4404 on Valley View Road, and it includes spruce trees in the boulevard that is for Oak Lawn. And so as you're going down it's where Oak Lawn, 62nd and Valley View intersect. As you're going down Oak Lawn, in the boulevard, there are these 2 spruce, and they're going to get bigger and bigger. And I've already heard from residents concerned that you can't see pedestrians and bicyclists as they're going down Valley View. And so there was criticism from the very beginning, like, why did you approve the spruce trees? And I just only recently discovered that in our code, it says you can't put spruce trees in the boulevard. And so it's hard to be in a position where you inadvertently approve something that you really shouldn't, but at the same time, doing the additional work to find out whether it is in violation is really a heavy lift. And so it would be great if we could be confident that, we are following code and we're getting the information when we make the decisions, and we have a more thorough analysis of what comes before us so we don't inadvertently undermine these efforts. So I just wanted to say that, and I don't know if there's anything we can do to systematically ensure that when projects come before us, there aren't aspects of them that are counter to code and counter to safety. I don't know.
What I can say is that, I didn't mention it, but as part of that policy and process review, our consultant is looking at sections of our city code that relate to traffic safety items. I'd have to check with them. I'm not sure if the boulevard tree section was included, but there certainly is a lot of connection there between both for traffic calming and for visibility of pedestrians, bicyclists, transit riders, motorists. So thank you for bringing that up, and that's something we will consider.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So 2 questions. First of all, I believe we have a plan that we're looking at all the crosswalks and everything to make them accessible, and that's been underway for a while as we're redoing sidewalks. Has that plan been folded into this, or how is that? I didn't see it on the list of documents you were referring to when you looked at creating the safety action plan.
I believe you're referring to our ADA transition plan.
Yes.
That certainly is related to this. All of the facilities that we would propose as part of this plan would be required to be ADA compliant.
Can you take the work that we've already done and fold it into this, is my question, as well as, we want it to be ADA accessible, but we've done quite a bit of work already, and can that, because I think that's a big source of danger. If you're slower, or if you're using devices to cross the street, you're more vulnerable. So
We're still doing the inventory.
Okay.
Big city, lots of sidewalks, lots of ADA ramps. We're continuing to try to do quadrants of this inventory.
Okay.
And then from there, work plans and work orders are put in based on staffing levels and budgets and stuff like that. So that's that's an operational thing that's happening already. There's really not a document that you referenced around ADA and the transportation side, other than these standards that are in the industry.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
And then my second question is, how reliable do we think these funds are in the Infrastructure Act? Do you think they'll be around by the time we've got our plan put together?
So the sunset date on the current IIJA is 2026. So at this point, we feel confident that we will be able to apply for funds in 2026 for construction of projects. Beyond then, it's up to the legislature to decide whether or not they want to continue that program and continue that funding. But for now, we're hoping for the best in 2026.
Okay, thank you.
Really a laudable goal here, this Vision Zero that was, I think, first talked about at length by Secretary Buttigieg at USDOT, and we think about the fact that we kill 50,000 people a year nationwide on our surface transportation system. Says really some important work to do. We've had, I think from your data, 4 fatalities in the last 2.5 years, and I couldn't tell from the data that you provided where those fatalities occurred, if they were on local streets or they were on trunk highways, they're running through our town, because you had data as to the percent of serious accidents and injuries that were occurring in multiple locations. So what can you tell us about those fatalities that we've had?
To clarify, it was 4 fatalities over a 10-year period. So on average,
okay.
that equates to about 1 fatality every 2.5 years.
All right.
Of those 4 fatalities, I recall 1 was on a county road, 1 was on France Avenue. I believe 2 of them were on state highways, and 1 was on a local roadway.
The one on the local roadway was the most recent one, where the little girl went out into the street on her trike. Does that count as a traffic
fatality? The most
fatality?
recent one that I'm aware of was on County Road. It was on France Avenue.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have any further comments or questions for Mr. Scipione? All right, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're fully supportive here. So continue the good work, you and your team. All right, we've got the next matter in this portion of the agenda is a report out on the quality of life survey work that has been done. We've been doing it for, what, Director Benner, 16 years, and we've had every other year we do the study, and you've got results over a 16-year period. And I want to turn to you now to introduce the topic, and then we've got Jason Newmeyer here not here with us, I guess virtually here with us from Polco, who's going to give a brief presentation on the results of that survey. So,
Thank you, Mayor
Go ahead.
Hovland. It has been my pleasure to work on Edina's Quality of Life Survey since 2011. We have done that survey in odd-numbered years. When we first started doing these statistically valid surveys, we worked with a local company. At that time, that company was called Decision Resources. It's now called Morris Leatherman. After a few surveys using that company, we made a switch from telephone surveys to mailed-in written surveys to provide more anonymity, and because research showed that surveys completed over the phone tend to get a response that's more positive in nature than neutral or in fact negative. So we have worked with Polco since then. Early on, that company was called the National Research Center. Polco has acquired that company as one of its lines of business, and we've been with them since. We started work on the 2025 survey last fall, in the fall of 2024, and it is my pleasure tonight to introduce Jason Newmeyer from Polco, who will talk about the survey methodology, and the key findings of the survey. With that, please welcome Jason Newmeyer.
Welcome, Mr. Newmeyer. I look forward to hearing your presentation.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. As was said, my name is Jason Newmeyer. I am the Survey Research Director at Polco and National Research Center, and I'm pleased to be here to present a summary of these results from the 2025 Edina Quality of Life Survey. I do want to, before I begin, on behalf of myself and my Polco coworkers, extend a thank you to Jennifer, who was our primary contact for us throughout the survey development and implementation process. She provided thoughtful and detailed feedback from start to finish on the survey itself, on the report of results, and on this presentation deck. So with that, a little bit about who we are before we share some of the results. So Polco is an online community engagement polling platform that provides local governments with resident and employee feedback. Today, hundreds of organizations nationwide use Polco for strategic planning, for budgeting, and for empowering resident voices. As was said before, Polco actually merged with the National Research Center in 2019. The National Research Center is best known for our national benchmarking surveys, such as the National Community Survey, the National Employee Survey, and the Community Assessment Survey for older adults, among other custom surveys like we completed here in Edina. Since 1994, we've worked with hundreds of jurisdictions nationwide, working to develop the largest benchmark database of local government sentiment in the United States. You can also see here that Polco partners closely with ICMA and the National League of Cities, as well as many other local government leaders like the Alliance for Innovation, the Engaged Local Government Leaders, and many, many academic partners, including the American Association for Public Opinion Research, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, the Hoover Institute at Stanford University, and most recently, the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. So this is the 8th time that Edina has conducted its quality of life survey with us. All households within the city were eligible to participate in this most recent survey. A list of all households within the zip codes serving Edina was purchased based on updated listings from the United States Postal Service. And then using GIS boundary files provided by the city, addresses located outside of Edina's boundaries were removed from the potential list of households to survey. So from that list, 2,000 addresses were randomly selected to receive the survey invitation. Those 2,000 randomly selected households received mailings beginning on April 7th, and the survey remained open for 6 weeks. The first mailing was a postcard inviting the household to participate in the survey online. The next mailing contained a cover letter with instructions, the survey questionnaire, and a postage-paid return envelope. And then the third and final mailing was another survey packet, providing residents with one final opportunity to participate. A total of 451 completed surveys were received from these efforts, providing a response rate of 24% and a margin of error of plus or minus 5%. Of those 451 completed surveys, 281 were completed on paper and 170 were completed online. Now at Polco, we have a benchmarking database that includes survey data from more than 400 communities across the country. This database includes responses from communities who have conducted our national community survey or a custom resident survey, such as Edina's, within the past 3 years. This allows jurisdictions to compare ratings of services to ratings of similar services from other communities, and we'll highlight those comparisons here through the rest of this presentation. So next we'll turn to some high-level results and some comparisons before we dive into our detailed key findings that our survey research and data science teams helped to develop in the report. So 78 items were available for national benchmark comparisons in this most recent survey. A higher rating indicates that the result was at least 10 points above the benchmark, while a much higher rating would be indicative of an average rating that's more than 20 points above the benchmark. Likewise, a lower rating is any item which has scored at least 10 points below the rolling national average. Items that rated much higher than the national average in Edina include the overall opportunities for education and enrichment, K through 12 education, public places where people want to spend time, shopping opportunities, snow removal, and adult educational opportunities. Additionally, 35 other items scored at least 10 points above the national benchmark. You can see here that there was one item that scored below our rolling national averages, and this was in relation to the question on what impact you think the economy will have on your family income in the next 6 months. 78 items were also available for comparisons to Minnesota communities. For most of these items, comparisons could be made to about 30 other communities found in Minnesota. In many cases, Edina ranked #1 when compared with other Minnesota communities, including for shopping opportunities, the overall quality of business and service establishments, snow removal, public places people want to spend time, ambulance or emergency services, the overall opportunities for education and enrichment, and adult educational opportunities. Just to reiterate, Edina was the top community among around 30 in Minnesota in each of those items that I just listed. Now, we have national comparisons, we have statewide comparisons, and we have comparisons to yourself. So when compared to results from 2023, there were 204 items available for trends. The margin of error for comparisons between these two most recent surveys is plus or minus 6%. So 22 items received more positive ratings over the past 2 years. Those with some of the largest increases include sidewalk maintenance, providing a safe and secure environment for all residents of all backgrounds, storm drainage, and street repair. Those top items that rated more negatively or lower in 2025 include the availability for housing for lower income families, the availability for housing for lower income singles, drinking water, sewer services, and overall economic health in the city. As you'll notice throughout the rest of this presentation, we're going to indicate areas where Edina exceeded national or state benchmarks and where statistically significant changes have occurred between the 2023 and 2025 surveys. All right, so with that, I'd like to move next into some of the highlights of our findings. I want to point out a few items that stood out to us as survey researchers. Now, there's a lot of additional data in the full report that we won't cover tonight, but the rest of this presentation will focus on a few areas that we found to be most noteworthy within the survey results. So key finding #1, Edina residents continue to enjoy a high quality of life. Residents continue to rate their quality of life highly, with 92% of survey respondents awarding excellent or good marks in 2025. This rating was higher than our national benchmark and similar to peer communities in Minnesota. As you can see here on the slide, this rating is similar to results dating back about a decade, with the overall quality of life rating holding steady between 92 and 98% from 2015 through 2025. The quality of several broad categories of community livability were also evaluated on the survey. About 9 in 10 residents positively rated the health and wellness opportunities in Edina, the quality of overall natural environment, and the overall opportunities for education and enrichment. Meanwhile, about 8 in 10 gave excellent or good ratings to the overall economic health, established built environment, the image or reputation, and the overall neighborliness of residents. Each of these ratings were similar to 2023, aside from the overall economic health of Edina, which decreased 7 points from 2023 from 90% to the current rating of 83%. Edina residents rated several community characteristics higher than both the national and Minnesota averages, including opportunities for education and enrichment, health and wellness opportunities, and even with the decrease, the overall economic health of Edina scored above national and Minnesota benchmarks. In addition to rating overall community characteristics, residents were also asked to rate several of the individual characteristics within the community. As in previous years, you can see here that the highest rated individual aspects were cleanliness, shopping opportunities, recreational opportunities, and the overall quality of business and service establishments. Other very well-rated aspects were K through 12 education, fitness opportunities, and public places where people want to spend time. You can see the